Hey guys, Pankaj here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to talk about something different, that is Python tips and tricks. Why? Because by now you would have learned enough about Python basics by watching all the videos. Those who have not watched, I would suggest please go back to my playlist and watch all the videos. Then you follow this video, okay? Because a lot of concept which we have already learned will be used here, okay? And by learning this tips and tricks, it will give you more interest to learn more about Python and get deep dive into the concept which you are learning, okay? So let's see what and all I'm going to cover. I'll share my screen. Okay, so these are the areas which I'm going to cover today. So first we'll see what is the various ways of variable unpacking. So we have seen variable assignment, right? So what are various ways to assign the variable and different values by unpacking, correct? Now, after that, we'll see how to save the variable. And we have seen ID inbuilt keyword also. And what is its use, we'll see a little bit. And what happened when you use it for value more than 255. Okay. What is the use of list function and tuple function? How to use them? Can we modify any list element which is used inside tuple, right? We'll see that this is very famous question in interview. How to do zipping and unzipping for an iterator using zip function, and how to unpack using star operator, okay? How we can merge multiple dictionary using double star operator, how to do uh, execution speed comparison using append and insert method of the list, or we will see a couple of options like how we can evaluate the execution speed or the performance factor of append and insert. Okay, so how to use time module for execution time profiling. So we'll see how to do that. Use of range. So range is basically inbuilt function by which we can generate a number of elements in a list. Okay. Then what is the use of filter, map, reduce function, and accumulate function? Then we'll see a lot of examples here and where to use, how to use, and why to use. Okay. How to get the size of any object. So I think in previous video also I have shown size of object for a list, but we'll see any other object also other than list. What is the difference between shallow copy and deep copy? So this is also a very famous question in interview. Okay, so I'll show some examples. Okay, how to run Python from Python script from the interpreter, and how you can compile a Python script using Python interpreter. Okay, and how you can run without running the script. So directly you can run the compile object. Okay, so let's go back and see. First one is ways of variable unpacking. Okay, so here we'll see how we were assigning the variable. We used any variable name or container name, and we will just give the number or anything, right? Then we used to print A. Similarly, we'll take B equal to 1 or 2 and print. Now you can. So this is the way you were assigning, right? So far. So if you see here, we are using two line, right, for assigning some value to different variables, correct? So can't we use one single line to assign different value for different variable? Yes, we can do that. And that's where your variable unpacking concept will come into picture. Okay, so how to do that? We can write all the variable whichever you would like to assign, use the assignment operator, and whatever value you are going to assign one by one. Okay, so the way you have written variable name, same way you can write the variable values. Okay, so it will be like one-to-one mapping. So A will be having value 1 and B will be having value 2. Okay, so remember guys, whenever you do this kind of bulk assignment using a single line operation, then make sure that whatever number of variable you use, it should match with the same number of values also. Okay, see what happens here. Okay, so this is the way you sign. Okay, so what happened if you take more than two value or three value? Let's say you have taken A, B, and C, but you are assigning only two values. Okay, so what will happen? This will not allow you to assign. It will throw an error. Not enough values to unpack, and that's where you are unpacking two values to three variable. It is not possible, right? Because A is taking one and B is taking two, but C is not going to take anything because you don't have any variable, right? But you are going to assign something which is not available. So that is the reason it is giving value error. Not enough values to unpack. Expected three but got two. Means what? You are giving three variable name, but you are giving or assigning two values, right? But here the expectation is user need to pass three values so that every value can be assigned one to one to all these three variable names. Okay. Similarly, let me take another value. I'll take C here. I'll take out C. So using two variable name but three values. Similar obvious. Too many values to unpack. You are giving too many values because it is more than number of variable assignment. Right? You are using two variable, but you are assigning three values, which is not possible. So that's why I told. So whatever variable name you are using, that those number of variables should be exactly same as those number of values which were you are assigned. Okay, so that's how we do a variable unpacking in a simple way. Another way is using star operator. So this star operator was not existing so far, which is Python below 3. Okay, the Python 3 and higher version, this star operator is also introduced. So how we can do here, let's say I'm using A, then B, okay, and another variable name is C. Now I'm going to send 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so what is happening here? This is what I showed you right earlier. Too many values to unpack. So now let's say you are having too many values, but you are using or you are going to use only three variable name, right? In this case, what I can do, user will have option to unpack multiple values in a single variable in the form of list. So a user can use star before the variable name. Okay, with any variable, not just B, I can use at C also. So in this case, what will happen? So first single value will get assigned to A, and after that it will keep assigning all the values to B until it finds another single value, right? Because C is going to hold one value, A is going to hold one value. So after A and C, whatever is remaining, all the things, all the remaining values will get assigned to B as in the form of list. Okay, so let's see how it works. Int A, int B, int C. Okay, you see here. So A is consuming 1, B is consuming 2, 3, and whatever is remaining, that is single value, will go to C. Okay, so that's how you can use. Let's take another example. I'll use A and star. Okay, so A, B, it will be a single value taken by A and B, and remaining value will be assigned to C. Okay, can we use multiple values? Let's see, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, I'll use star B also, and here I'll use star D. Let's see what happens. Is it possible or not? Two star expression in assignment. So it means only one single star operation can be used, or one single star expression in assignment can be used, not two. Okay, so I'll just mention here only single star assignment and unpacking. Okay, so remember, this is what you can refer while doing the assignment. Okay, guys, so that's all about variable unpacking. So let's see another one, that is swapping variables values. So this is very simple. This also will be asked in the interview, like how do you do variable swapping in single line, right? So let's say if I assign A equal to 1 and B equal to 2, right? I would like to uh, have variable interchange, right? So A will be having 2 and B will be having 1. So what is the best way? Same way, the way we did unpacking, I'll use A, B and equal to B and A. I can, these objects are already defined here, right? That's how it is possible. So now the assigned value will be B and A will be assigned back to A and B. Okay. So, this is the shortest way of variable swapping. Okay, so we have next one is ID operator. So guys, if you remember ID, I was using to get the memory location of an object, right? So let's say I have A equal to 10, B equal to 10 here, and ID of A, it is going to print the uh, value of A in the form of integer, okay? So A is having 10 and B equal to 10. So if you remember in my previous video, I told, right, if values are already, let's say you have defined some value and another variable is having same value. If value is already defined somewhere earlier in the program, it is going to point the same object. Okay, so B, you are assigning 10. So 10 is already defined in A, right? So B basically pointing to same memory location wherever A is defined. And that is the reason you are getting ID or identification of A memory location same as B. Okay, so if you are going to check, right, without checking the memory location, if you want to check, let me just try it again. So I want to check whether A is holding the same memory location as B or B is holding the same memory location as A. So we have one keyword operator called B. Right? So this is nothing but to compare the memory location. So those who are watching this video first time, please watch my operator video where I have been talking about this particular keyword. Okay, so this is keyword basically used for comparing the memory location of an object. Okay, so if both are having same memory location, it is going to return Boolean true. Okay, that's why we got. Okay, so that's about ID. But now here the question is, what happens when you use more than number? I think it is not 255, it should be 256. Okay, so let's take a look. Take same example. And this time I'm going to find 256 and here also 256. All good. Now let's change the value to 257 and 257. Okay. Now what happened? What has happened here? Why it is giving false though we are having the same value, right? A and B. Okay, so the reason behind this is when Python interpreter was designed, right? So developers have hard coded or they have cached the smallest number in the memory, that is from -5 to 256. Okay, so -5 to 256, those are smallest number and very frequently that's why they have used that number, and that is the reason you are getting the same memory location. Whenever you are going to assign any number which is greater than 256, you are going to get different memory location. And that is the reason, though it looks same, but they are pointing to different memory location. Okay. So the reason behind this, let me just put it here. -5 to 256. Already cached. So whenever user is querying those number which is falling between -5 to 256, he or she is going to get the same memory location. Okay, and this is the reason you are getting here as false, because 257 is greater than 256. Okay, this is very tricky thing, and people should know why and how it is coming. Okay, it may not be asked in interview, but you guys should know. Okay, let's see what is the next item here. We have list function and tuple function. So those who have seen the list and tuple videos, so I have created list like this. Okay, and be a tuple like this. And type of A and type of B, right? So A is your list and B is tuple. So what if you, due to some programming, whenever you are writing some logic or in particular situation, you would like to have list as a tuple or tuple as a list, right? So what is the best way to convert? So we directly have inbuilt function, list function and tuple function. So list function will convert any iterable object in the form of list, and tuple will convert any iterable object as tuple. Okay. So I'm going to convert A as tuple and B as a list, because B is here as tuple and A is already a list. So how we can do? The best way is, so I can use, let's say I'm assigning A and away, and here I'm going to use D. So tuple I'm going to make as a list B. So let's see C and D. What is happening here? C here. C got converted to tuple because we are using tuple function, and D got converted to list because we are using list function. Okay, similarly we have dictionary also, which you can try. Okay, so now next, this is my favorite question. Can we modify a list which is used as an element inside a tuple? Okay, so those who are already aware of this list and tuple, so they will be knowing what is mutable and immutable. Right? So tuple as in immutable object and list is mutable. So mutable is once the list or any table object which is in the form of list can be modified. Its internal content can be modified. But tuple as an immutable, once it is defined, you cannot modify. Okay. So those are heterogeneous object data type, right? So what happens here? So I'll just assign 1, 2, and 3 be equal to 4, 5, and 6. Okay. And here I'm going to take 7, 8, and 9. Let's take directly tuple. Okay. So when I ask this question in interview, most of the person get failed here because they know tuple is immutable and that cannot be modified, right? So the moment they see this small bracket, they directly say it cannot be done. But remember, guys, whenever you use any mutable or immutable object inside another mutable or immutable object, they will not lose their mutable or immutable properties. Okay. So what does it mean? Since you are using mutable object inside immutable object, this will still have its mutability property alive. Okay, so you are free to change any value inside a list, but as a list which is a single element of tuple cannot be modified. Internal content of list which is already mutable can be modified. Okay, so answer is yes, yes, we can modify. How to modify? So let's say I would like to convert change 7 to, let's say, 700. How you can do? First, to reach this element, right? So this element is what is index? 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so a3 is what? 7, 8, 9. Now a3 is nothing but pointing to a list. So now you know how to access the list element. So a3, now I use 0, right? So it means 0. Now if you do the assignment a3 0 to 700, what will happen? Check the list. This is your final tuple. So 4, 5, 6. It is still having one single element as a list. That's fine. But internal content of the list has been changed. Okay, so please remember this is the way you modify. Okay, how to do zip and unzip of an iterator. So we have one zip function. So what it does basically, it takes two table and it will just do one-to-one mapping of first element of first iterator and first element of second iterator, and it will create a tuple. Okay, so that's how it will do the binding of that element. So I'll just take one small example here. 1, 2, 3. You can do same thing with tuple also. 4, 5, 6. Okay, so you can use a zip function. Let me assign c equal to zip. Just provide all the object name. You see here a zip object yielding tuples until an input is exhausted. Okay, so it will take both the items, take one to one, and create a tuple, and it will keep doing until it gets the smallest element of an iterable. Okay, so since C is going to be, let me just check the type of C. It is going to be a zip object. So I can use this function and just unpack. What do you see here? So 1 is combined with 4, 2 is combined with 5, and 3 is combined with 6. That's how you do. So this will be used whenever you have like two kind of iterable and you want to do, let's say, first element of first iterable to be modified to be multiplied by first element of the second iterable, right? So one-to-one mapping, and they do multiplication or summation or maybe subtraction or whatever operation you are going to perform. Zip will be the best function. Okay, but here it comes with some drawback also. What is the drawback? Okay, so whenever zipping is trying to bind the element, right? So it will take the smallest list, whichever is smallest, up to those element it will do the binding, and it is going to lose the element which is having more number of elements. Okay, so that is a drawback. So if I am going to take, let's say, another example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and b equal to, let's say, 7 and 8. So now if you're going to do zip of C zip to B. Okay, now convert this into C. See what happens. So one has binary 6, 2 is 7, 3 and 8. What happened 4 and 5? This is the problem. Okay, so it is always going to consider the smallest list, map all the elements one to one, and remaining element will be discarded. Okay, so you are basically losing the data. So this is the biggest drawback of the zip functionality. Okay, now let's see how to do unzipping. So here zip. So take same example here. So I'm just typing unzip, though it is not a function, but I'm going to do unzip operation. Okay, so I'll just take this one, 1, 2, 3, and here let's take 4, 5, and 6. So zip 1, 4. Now to do unzip, we have something called star operator. Okay, so I'll use zip along with star and do the C. Okay, so what it will do, it will create a separate list. The way it has mapped here, right? The way it has binded, it will just do unbinding. So unbinding, it will take all the first element of each tuple, make a single list, and all second element of each tuple and make a single list. Okay, so I'll just take D. Okay, so the element. Okay, so zip of, oh sorry, since it is iterator, right? So since you are using already, you have already unpacked this by using this function, so it has lost all the values. Okay, so how do this? Okay, so this is happening because of iterator object. I'll talk in some other video what is iterator and how it works. So just for timing, you remember C is holding the unzipped values of A and B, and you are going to unzip by using star C. Okay, so this will be unzipped and separate list will be returned. So this list will have the tuple of each element. Okay, so first element of each tuple as a single tuple, and second element of each tuple as a single tuple, and both tuple will be written as a list. Okay. Now later you can do unpacking, right? So what I can do here, D is your zip, so I can use E and F equal to 20. Then again. Okay, so again, I have already given the list. So let's remove this one and take simple example once again. Yes. More. This I don't want to do that. D, E. So where is D? Oh, sorry. So D is already a list, right? Yeah, I'm missing something. So A, B, this is list C. Ah, this is the problem. I should not do this one. Okay. So what I was doing, I was already unpacking here, right? So nothing was there. That's why I was getting none or null. Correct? So A, B is the list here, and C we are zipping, then we are unzipping, and we are unpacking in the form of list. Okay, so those two separate lists will be returned in the form of E and okay. So this is the way you unzip. Okay, let's see how to use double star operator for dictionary update or merging two dictionary, right? So those who have not watched dictionary video, please watch it and come back here because there I have already talked how to update a dictionary. So let's talk about one dictionary here, A equal to A colon 1, V column 2. C column, let's say we have C column 3. Okay. So how we used to update here? Contain okay. So I would like to merge those two lists, correct? So how we were merging it? So there is one function called update. Okay, that is the part of dictionary function. Okay, so I can write a dot update C. After that, what will happen? C A got updated with dictionary C, right? Or I can use B dot update. Okay, so anyway, whichever way you want, you can do that. So this is one way of updating or merging two dictionary by using update method, right? So how to use? By using double star. So let's take same example. Okay, so what I can do, I can just create another dictionary and I can use curly braces and just follow double star A, double star B. Okay, so double star, basically I'll be talking about this double star in the function class or function review. Okay, so it has specific meaning. This is also known as keyworded argument, right? So why it is keyworded? Because every key is having associated some values, right? So that's why it is keyworded. So basically it does uh, take this as a dictionary argument and it will just unpack here, and B will be another dictionary which will be unpacked here, right? So those will be separate elements in the form of complete dictionary. So that's how we use double star operator for merging the dictionary. Okay, this is another favorite interview question. So first of all, they will ask like which one is preferred method, append or insert. If you say append, then they will ask why. How you can prove it? Append is the best method, or how why insert is very slow. Okay, so I can prove this by doing some time profiling. Okay, so append is best. Why? Because theoretically, append is getting uh, append is adding element always at the end of the list. Okay, so it doesn't care how many elements are there before that, correct? So it doesn't have to update index of previous element. But in the form of insert, whenever you insert any element, let's say at the 0th position, right, what will happen? Whatever earlier element was there in that position, that will be shifted by 1. So index of each and every successive element will get updated, and that's where it takes more time. Okay, so that is the reason insert is taking more time, append is taking less time. Let's take one example here, simple example. So I'm going to create one a empty dictionary, empty list, and I'll run for loop and keep adding the element there. Okay, and keep adding the element by using append method of list. For those who are not aware about the list and how to use the append and all, please watch my list from the playlist, list video from the playlist. So for I in I'm going to explain range right after this. That is this topic. So first I'm going to use range is basically a function which will generate a number of elements. Okay. So we have, let's say I'm going to generate, maybe I'll just write one variable here, count equal to 10 to the power, let's say 4. Okay. And use count here. Dot and 8. Okay. So let's run this and see how much time it takes. It just took 5 milliseconds to create those number of elements. Okay, and if you would like to check what is the length of this, sorry, 10,000, correct? Now let me just comment, and I'm going to take same example, and I'm just going to insert some element. Okay, insert at 0th position, and element will be I. I think this was my bad. I should appended I, not A. Okay, it is going to take 4 milliseconds, and this is going to take 47 milliseconds. You can see significant improvement not improvement. Basically, it is taking more time. Okay, so 4 millisecond, 47 millisecond. You might have not noticed, right? Even though because this might be very small number of elements for the Python interpreter, right? So let's increase the number by 6. Okay, so here how much time it takes? Almost 195 millisecond. And here if I run 6, let's see what happens. See, it is still running. Star means processing is happening internally. Let's see how much time it takes. I think I have taken very large number. So, but see, still it will be completed. Okay, it may take some more time because it's a very huge number, right? So what I'll be doing, I'll be just interrupting this in execution by pressing double I, or I mentioned in the previous video how to interrupt using interrupt option. Okay, so I'll go back and just fix this problem. I'll just use 5. Let's see how much time it takes. Okay, it has taken 6.64 seconds. It's a very huge number. Okay, for you it might be small, but for Python interpreter or programming wise, it's a very big number. If it is going to take this much number, then I don't know how we are going to program. We cannot write large application by using insert option, right? So use it wisely. Okay, when if it is small number, it's okay, but to create very huge list and where huge number of elements are there, better to use append. Okay, so 10 to 6, it took 117 milliseconds, and here let's run once again. 4.35 seconds. Okay, so that is the reason append is taking less time and insert is taking more time, and this is the reason append will be preferred over insert. Okay, how to use, next one is how to use time module for execution time profiling. So guys, this module I have already installed. That is a plugin using NB extension. Okay, execute time. So if you are not having, I will suggest another way to do that. That is also very easy to do. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll just take this example here using one module called time. Okay, so I'll be talking about module in detail in the module section, a module video. So we have something called time. Just import it, and here before execution, just take t1 equal to time dot time. It is going to return epoch time in the form of ticks. So this is my t1. If you would like to print, it will be like this. Let me just show you. Okay. So this is epoch time. Those who are not aware of epoch time, this is you can Google it. It's very easy. You can convert into hour, minutes, and second, and day wise. All the details will be published in the video. We can see that. Okay, so maybe I can just refer you guys so that Unix epoch time conversion. If you go here and put your number, whatever you just got, just convert it. So this is your human readable format. Okay. So Saturday, October 2, 2021, 10:42, 10:25. This is the way you convert. Okay. So whatever number you are getting, don't worry about this because I'm going to get another number using T2. So after execution, I'm going to run this once again. Once append is done, use T2 and just subtract it. T2 minus T1. And just mention total execution time equal to this will be in seconds, right? Let's mention this. Dot format. See here, total execution time is 0.168 millisecond. It is actually 168 millisecond. Okay, let's add some more number here. We will get in second. 7. It is going to take some time, so we took 1.5 second. Okay, now let's run same code and just instead of open, I'll be using insert 0 position and I. Okay, I'll make a small number, otherwise it is going to hang. Okay, let's see. So let it execute. Meanwhile, you can see 1.52 second and this is 1.5, exactly same. So either you go with this method or this method. Okay, so here we took almost 4.49 second. You see here, using the plugin also, I'm getting almost same number. Okay? So this is the way you can use time module for profiling. Okay, so let's see the next one, use of range. So range is, guys, let me just show you the syntax first. Range is inbuilt function. So here you can define start number. This will be very handy if you are going to generate larger number. Instead of like I create a list, right, using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Smaller number it is okay, but what about 100 number, 1000 number? So range is the best function to use that. So stop number from where to where and step size. Okay, so this is the syntax. So let's see how to use range. If you don't give start stop, then it will be it is going to work as same what we did in the indexing in the list or tuple or string. Okay, if I just give 10, so by default it will start from 0 and length minus 1, that is 10 minus 1, so it will be 0 to 9. Okay, so it is going to give me the iteration as a iterator. If you would like to see as a list, you can use list function. Okay, so now we have start index. Let's say I'm going to, by default is going to start with 0. I'm going to start with 2 and 2 to 10. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up to length minus 1. Okay, now I want 1 to 10 and every second object or every second element, right? So 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Okay, that's how you get all the even number. If I want from 0 to 10, every second element, that is 0 to 4, 6, 8. That's how range works. So this will be very handy. Please remember that. Okay, our next topic is the use of filter, map, and reduce function and accumulate function. Okay, so first let me tell you why these functions will be used. So basically, let's say you have large set of retrievable objects, right? So what happens? You would like to filter those elements for which condition is true, or for which condition is non-zero element or become basically true. Then those number or those element will be returned using filter option. Okay. Now let's say you have tens of thousands of element and you would like to apply some kind of function in that particular retrievable object, right? So there you can use map function. So just put a function name and whatever retrievable you have, that put that object, right? So the function will be applied over all the object or all the element of that particular retrievable object. Okay, so that's where we use map. Now let's see what does reduce mean. So reduce basically what it does, it will take the retrievable object and every two element it will be taking and performing the operation whichever is applied by user. Okay, and outcome of that operation will be used and combined with the next element of the retrievable object. Okay, then same operation will be performed and take the output, use that output combined with the next retrievable object element and keep performing the operation. And finally, you get the final output. Okay, so here it returns the final output, but what about intermediate result? That is not stored, right? So to get or to see those intermediate results also, you can use accumulate function. Okay, so filter and map, it used to be inbuilt keyword in Python 2 or before Python 3 and reduce also. But now filter map is available in Python 3 directly, but reduce and accumulate is part of functool library. Okay, so let's see how to use that. So I'm going to define, let's say, one list here. So 1, then 0, then 2, then 0. Then let's say, because it is heterogeneous, right, I can define false. Sorry, none, I can use false as well. Okay. So what happens if you use filter? So filter right here and syntax filter function, and here function name, the table. So we have two options: either use function name or you can use none also. Let's say you are not sure about the function name, right? And you have not yet decided anything. So it will just, you just pass none. So none of the function will be applied to the table. It will just return only those elements for which not. It will return only those element of that table for which filter is true. Okay, or only the true value will be returned, which is non-zero value. Okay, so I'm going to use filter. Then since I don't have any function here, I'll just mention none and use it. Okay, so see, it is going to return me the filter retrieval object, right? So what you can do, you can just convert into list. So you got 1 2. Why 1 2? Because see, 1 is non-zero element, so it is true. 0 is false, that is zero element, right? So any non-zero element will be returned by using filter, for which condition is going to be true. Okay, and none is also treated as false, and here also it is false. Okay, this is also considered as a zero element or null element. Okay, so that's how you use filter. So maybe I can show this once again when I teach you guys how to write function. Okay, so we'll be creating various function and apply that particular function to this filter method. Okay. So let's take a look at map. So map syntax is very similar. Here any function name, but none is not there. So you must give the function name and retrieval object. Let's say I'm going to use range this time. Now you know how to use the range. So I'm going to use up to 10. Okay. So using map function, what I'm going to do, let's say I want to print the binary of all the number between 0 to 9. Okay. So we already have binary inbuilt function or inbuilt keyword, and retrieval object is 8, right? It is going to return me one map iterator. I can convert into a list. See here. Okay, so this is the binary of all the number between 0 to 9, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up to 9. That's how you use map. Let's talk about the reduce. So reduce, guys, as I mentioned, it is not directly available. You have to use one library called functool. Import functools as ft. So don't worry about this syntax. I will be talking about this more in methods or function video. Okay, so under ft we have, I'm going to take single example. Equal to, let's say I want to have sum of all the elements. Okay, 1 2 3 4 and 5. Okay, I want to have sum of all the elements of this particular list. How you can do? So first you will add 1 and 2. So whatever comes 3 will be added with 3. 6 will be added with 4. Okay, 10, then 10 will be added with 5. So that is 15. So to final final result of this particular will be 15, right? So same thing you can do by using reduce method. So reduce also takes similar number of arguments. So let me just show you. Reduce function name and retrieval. Okay, so okay, so how to use reduce? So as I mentioned, first it needs two argument, right? So first two argument will be used. How this two argument will be passed here? We don't have any function right now, right? So I'm going to write one lambda function, which is anonymous function. So don't worry about this because I'm going to talk about this in detail in the function video. Okay, so we have one function called lambda. I will just give one name, lambda. It is going to take two arguments. I'm going to return sum of those two elements. Okay. So if you want to see what is lambda, Okay, it is a function name. Okay, now ft dot reduce. So as per syntax, I need to use function name. So my function name is lamb, and what is my iterable? That is a. So what it will do, it will take first two elements, that is 1 and 2. So 1 will be going to x, okay, that is this, and 2 will be going to y, and it will perform x plus y and return the value to this, okay, and that value will be going and getting combined with 3, and again it will be added, and so on it will do, and finally we'll get the final result. Okay, so we got the final result 50. So let's say if I give 6 7, you can directly have. Okay, so I'm just showing you as the summation of this. You can add maybe star, or maybe you can add multiplication, division, whatever you want. Okay, so that's how you use reduce. So now let's see next one, how to get size of any object, right? So I think in previous also I have shown you how to do that. So I have, let's say, empty dictionary or empty list, or let's have some element. Then I'll have the two, let's say have some tuple. If I see my dictionary, okay. So how much memory it is consuming in the Python interpreter, right? So how to get to know? We have something called system library. So import this. Okay, so once this is imported, you can get the size of this. So print, let's say size of list A. Or maybe I can just use this. It will be in bytes. Okay, so I'll be just writing bytes. Dot comment. So first we have list, right? So sys dot get size of A. B and C. Okay, so this would be your, okay, this would be your dictionary. See what is missing. So replacement is 1 out of range. Size of this. Oh, okay. I'm using 2 to be replaced, right? 2 braces we are using, so we have to have 2 values here. So size list of A, then we can use A dot, and here B comma, B comma, and C comma. Okay, because we are going to put exact list, exact tuple in exact dictionary, correct? So size of list 1 to 3 is 80 bytes. It is consuming 80 bytes in the memory, and this tuple is consuming 56 bytes, and this dictionary is consuming 232 bytes. Okay, so this is the way to get the size of any object. Okay, so next one is shallow copy versus deep copy. This is also very famous question in interview. Okay, so what is shallow copy? So guys, if you have seen, I just give like A equal to some list and B equal to A, right? So whenever you do this kind of operation, it is always copying the object. But whether it is really doing deep copy or shallow copy, that is the question here. Okay, so let's see what is shallow copy. Shallow copy stores the references of object to the original memory address. Okay, the original means wherever your object is defined. Now deep copy stores copies of the object's value. Okay, so deep copy doesn't reflect changes made to the new copied object in the original object. So what does it mean? Let's see by example. So assume that I'm just using one dictionary A 1 2 3. B I'm giving equal to A. Okay, so this is the example of shallow copy, so let me put under shallow. Okay, so now what will happen here? Print A, print B. Okay, so in this case, in the shallow copy case, what will happen if you are going to modify element of B, right? So same thing will be reflected in A also. Okay, that's what shallow copy means. So let's see the example here. I'm going to modify the zeroth index as 100. Now print B and then print A also. See what is happening. Did I modify A content? No, right? So this is getting reflected because you modified B, because B is holding reference of A also. So if any modification is done in B, that will be reflected in object A also. Okay, this is what is shallow copy. So how to avoid this kind of changes if user is not intended to do that? Therefore, we have deep copy. Okay. See, if you remember, guys, in the list we have one method called copy. So how to do that? I'll take same example. Okay, so here A and B. So what you can do here, take A dot copy. Okay, so what it will do, it will just copy all the object, all the value of A to the B, basically creating a new list as B. So any modification done in B will not be making any changes in the original list, which is A. Okay, now make this change and see here. So now print B, that is, let me just print A here and B here. Okay. So your A is 1, 2, 3 and B is 100, 2 and 3. So only B is getting modified, not A. So this is the difference between shallow copy and deep copy. And this is how you should answer in the interview also. Okay, so next one we have running script from Python interpreter. How you can run it? Okay, let me show one example. So what is basically Python interpreter? You can open one command prompt. Okay, so command prompt, you just type Python. So I have 3.9. Okay, so Python 3.9.4, 9.4, and this is where your the moment you see this prompt means you can write the program, okay, and execute the program. So this interpreter can be used as a calculator also. Let's say I have 1 plus 2, it will just return the 3 because the interpreter, right, line by line it will be executed. Okay, so let's exit from this. I'm going to run one script using Python. So let's create one small Python script. Text file. I'll write one simple program equal to 1 equal to 2 and c equal to a plus b and c. Okay. Now let's save it as test1.py. How to save and how to execute that. So first, let me just show you if you are going to execute using notebook, so that also can be done. So what you can do, we have one magic keyword or magic operator by which you can execute any command from related command from the codebook itself. So that is nothing but exclamation mark here. And let's say I use ls-l. Okay, so these are program, and here test1.py is existing. Correct. So what you can do now, I can just type column Python 3.9 test1.py. This is the way you can execute. Okay, the same way I can execute here also. So cd documents, then I have Python program, then I have ICSR, now we have 01. It's test1.py. So all you can do is Python 3.9 test1.py. Okay, so now this executed, you are getting the final output. This is what we saw here. Okay. So this is the way you run any Python script from the interpreter. Call the name of the interpreter, then give the file name of that Python. Okay. Now we have another way to execute by using compiled object method. Okay. So you can first compile the Python script file, and you can call the compiled object in the interpreter and get the output without running the Python script. So first you should know how to compile it. correct? So for compiling, we have Python 3.9. You have to use -m, that is module, and we have something called compile all. Then give the file name. What is my file name? Test1.py. So the moment you run, see it is compiled, right? So it is going to create one object here, and that will be located under PyCache file. Okay, so cd underscore PyCache. You can go here, ls-al. Now you see this test1.scipython, cpython 3.9.pyc. This is PyCache file. So this is basically object file, and you can run how? By calling Python interpreter 3.9 test1. See, you are getting the similar object. If you are going to edit it, this will not be in readable form. So let me just show you using this. So what is my pwd? This is what I have. Now we have this command Python 3.9 and Python m compile all test1.py, right? Okay. Now how does it? Python 3.9. We have this PyCache. I should go here first. Then one. To copy the file in. Okay, so same way you can execute here also. Okay guys, so that's all. You execute the Python script from interpreter and using compile method. Okay, I hope you understood all the concept whatever I've showed you. So I would say again suggest please watch the video, run each and everything whatever I've shown in your Python notebook in parallel. Okay, and definitely it is going to help you very helpful in your interview. All the question, at least 3 or 4 questions definitely you can expect from interviewer. Okay, so if you have not understood any concept, please leave out the comment in the video, and I'll definitely help you guys to understand. Okay, thank you guys. Have a nice day. Please subscribe my channel if you haven't subscribed. Bye bye.